Sudan. It's a country you've probably seen in the news, but unless you've been paying close attention, you might not actually know just how bad things are there right now. I'm talking full-scale war, millions displaced, ethnic cleansing, and violence that sounds like something out of a horror movie. But what's happening here? What has led to this moment, and why are some of the world's most powerful countries so involved? Sudan's story is one of conflict, but it's also about something much bigger. It's a story of foreign powers competing for influence, a power struggle within, and a humanitarian disaster that's spiraling out of control. And the deeper you dig into it, the more complicated it gets. But stick with me because I'm going to take you step by step through this messy, often heartbreaking story of how Sudan became a proxy battleground for global power. To understand Sudan's crisis today, we need to look at its colonial past. From 1899 to 1956, Sudan was under joint British and Egyptian control, which focused its rule on exploiting Sudan for its resources, especially cotton. The British favoured the Arab elites in the north, placing them in positions of power, while marginalising the predominantly African populations. This division set the stage for decades of conflict after Sudan's independence in 1956. Sudan's first civil war, which began in 1955, was largely a product of the colonial divisions between the North and South. This war would last for 17 years, resulting in a fragile peace that would be shattered only a decade later. However, by the time the Second War broke out in 1983, the stakes were even higher. Sudan had discovered oil. Oil became the center of Sudan's internal and external power struggles. Most of the oil reserves were located in the south, but the infrastructure to export it, including pipelines and ports, was controlled by the north. This economic imbalance only deepened the conflict with the south, where they demanded autonomy and control over their own resources. This war lasted until 2005, killing over 2 million people and displacing 4 million more. But oil wasn't just a resource, it was a bargaining chip, a strategic asset that foreign powers would soon set their sights on. Foreign powers quickly got involved, not for humanitarian reasons, but to secure their slice in Sudan's oil wealth. Countries like the United States and China backed different factions in the conflict, each hoping to establish lucrative oil deals for themselves. This foreign involvement escalated the violence as the stakes for controlling Sudan's oil resources increased. In the middle of the Second Civil War, another horrific conflict emerged in Darfur, a region in Western Sudan. In 2003, non-Arab groups in Darfur were marginalised by the central government for decades, and they rose up against this regime. In response, the government unleashed the Janjaweed, a militia known for committing mass atrocities, including murder, rape, and the burning of entire villages. The Darfur genocide resulted in deaths of over 300,000 people and displaced millions. It wasn't just a story of ethnic violence, it was a story of power and control. And from this conflict emerged the Rapid Support Forces, also known as the RSF, who are a militia that would later rise to prominence as one of the most feared factions in Sudan. But despite the widespread reports of ethnic cleansing, rape, and genocide, the world turned a blind eye. Why is that? Put simply, because Darfur did not have any oil. there was no economic interest to save the people of Darfur. Then, in 2011, South Sudan gained its independence after decades of war. But this independence didn't bring lasting peace. While South Sudan took control of over 75% of the oil fields, and North Sudan retained control of the infrastructure necessary to export it, it created a new conflict between the two nations. Disputes over borders, resources, and lingering tensions meant that peace maintained fragile. Meanwhile, regions like Darfur, the Nuba Mountains, and the Blue Nile continued to be sites of unrest and violence. All while both the North and South were relying heavily on oil and its revenue for their economies. By 2019, the Sudanese people had enough. After 30 years of dictatorship under Omar al-Bashir, he was overthrown by the public through mass protests. His regime, known for its brutality due to its reliance on military and paramilitary forces like the Rapid Support Forces, had left the country in economic ruin and social disorder. The streets of Sudan were filled with hope as civilians demanded a transition to democracy, but peace was not on the horizon. The Sudanese armed forces, referred to as the SAF, which is the military of Sudan, who were led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and the Rapid Support Forces, who were commanded by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also known as Hemedti, fought against each other for control, to which there was a power-sharing deal between military and civilian leaders. However, this deal ultimately collapsed in 2021 when al-Burhan staged a coup, which sets the stage for violent struggle that would come. And then, in April 2023, the tensions between the SAF and the RSF exploded into a full-scale war. However, this isn't just a civil conflict, it's a proxy war, with global powers picking sides and fueling the flames, exploiting Sudan's resources and geopolitical position. Let's break it down. The UAE, for example, has significant financial interests in Sudan, particularly in its gold reserves. Sudan is Africa's third largest producer of gold, and the UAE has been deeply involved in securing access to these resources. The RSF, under Hemedti's control, manages many of the gold mines, selling the precious metals to fund its military operations. Sudan's RSF has also been a crucial ally for the UAE in regional conflicts, particularly in Yemen, where the RSF mercenaries have fought alongside UAE-backed forces. This partnership strengthens the UAE regional influence, while also enriching the UAE's gold reserves through control over Sudan's gold. And then there's Russia. Russia, through the infamous Wagner Group, has also been heavily involved in Sudan. Wagner has provided military support to the RSF in exchange for access to Sudan's gold mines, which have become even more important to Russia as Western sanctions over the Ukraine war tighten. Sudan's gold now helps finance Russia's war efforts, as well as its broader global geopolitical ambitions in Africa. But Russia's interest in Sudan isn't just about gold. It's also about establishing a strategic military presence. Russia has long sought to build a naval base on the Red Sea, which would give it a foothold in the Indian Ocean and project power in a region dominated by Western and Gulf interests. By supporting Hemedti and the RSF, Russia is positioning itself as a key player in Sudan's future. Egypt's primary concern in Sudan is the Nile River, as it is the lifeblood of Egypt's agricultural economy. The Nile's flow is critical to Egypt's survival, Egypt supports al-Buhran and the Sudanese military because they represent stability and control over the northern regions where the Nile flows into Egypt. With ongoing tensions between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, Egypt sees Sudan as a buffer zone. A friendly government in Khartoum ensures that Egypt has influence over the Nile's water management, preventing Ethiopia from controlling too much of the river's flow. And Saudi Arabia's interest in Sudan is twofold: regional stability and control of the Red Sea. Sudan's strategic position, along with this critical waterway, makes it an important player in Middle Eastern geopolitics. While Saudi Arabia has engaged in peace talks, it remains cautious, not wanting to fully back either side in the conflict. However, like the UAE, Saudi Arabia has worked closely with the RSF in other regional conflicts, particularly in Yemen, where RSF fighters have supported the Saudi-led coalition. By maintaining influence over Sudan, Saudi Arabia hopes to protect its strategic interests on the Red Sea and beyond. And while these foreign powers battle for control over Sudan's future, we are in a current state where the people of Sudan are caught in the crossfire. More than 25.6 million people are in desperate need of humanitarian aid, and millions have been displaced. Famine is spreading, and the healthcare system is on the brink of collapse. 80% of health facilities are now inoperable. The people of Sudan are suffering while the world watches from a distance. And as the fighting rages on between the SAF and RSF, in Darfur, the region where one of the worst genocides of the 21st century took place, is once again experiencing this very same ethnic cleansing. The RSF and its allied militias have once again targeted non-Arab communities in what some are calling a second genocide. Villages are being burned, civilians killed, and women subjected to horrific acts of sexual violence. History is repeating itself in Darfur, and the world cannot afford to look away. You see, Sudan isn't just a local conflict. It is a proxy war, with global powers battling for control over resources and strategic influences. But this is a dangerous game, and it is the people of Sudan who are paying the ultimate price. The world must act now. Will we continue to allow foreign interests to keep exploiting this country while millions suffer? Or will the international community step up and demand a ceasefire and humanitarian aid? If you found this video informative, please don't forget to like and share this video to help spread more awareness. Please also subscribe if you would like to see more in-depth analysis on global issues.